Joe.
Give me the signal, pick me. You have my full permission to go.
Hi, Joe.
It's okay. How are you?
I'm well.
We're just missing Chris.
Chris said he'd be a little late, so I got a little piece of class.
Are you back?
Does the naughty person get stuck between the two of you? Is that how that works? Or did Chris just draw the short straw?
Do the short straw. It's what you get when you're late.
Sandwich between the
Joe, 6:30, so I'm gonna go ahead and start.
Okay. Let's get Tammy just a second. She's getting some stuff.
I'll put up for you maybe.
Then I think we can. For the mic's on. Yes.
Yes. Okay. It's 6:32, so I'm gonna go ahead and start the meeting. And we have a quorum present. And everyone should have an agenda in front of them. The only amendment to the agenda that I'm aware of is at the very bottom where it says the next regular meeting date. That should be November 14th of 2022. Anything else? Joe, any late additions?
No.
Ed? Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I do have, can I bring up the minutes, something that I posed in the minutes? Is this the time to do that?
That would be when we get to the consent agenda.
We're not there.
Let these out.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Yep.
Any motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve. I'll second it.
There's a motion made by Mike, seconded by Zach to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So the next item on our agenda is to work with IASB and our school attorney for some training, and I will let Joe introduce our trainers. Welcome.
And I'm going to give you by name and give you a chance to share basically what you would like to share for background. Tonight, for your professional development piece for the board, we've got Tammy Drubau from IASB, representing your school board association for the state. Sitting to her left in black is your school attorney. This is Catherine Finken. And I'll just start with Catherine. She can share what she would like for the crowd as far as background is concerned, and then we'll move to Tammy.
Absolutely. Well, I just wanted to thank you all for being here. In my role, there's about a dozen attorneys in my firm specializing in just K-12 school law. And if you think about it, if a firm in the largest city in the state can employ 12 people just to help school boards operate, that means you all have a lot on your plate. So I really appreciate the chance to be here. And partnering with the State Association of School Boards, I think is particularly helpful. I think our combined, I suppose our combination of statewide experiences may be able to provide some context, kind of see both the law and the rules, why we make certain recommendations and how those things play out. And so, Tammy, I know you've got a program prepared, and I'll let you take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Catherine. Catherine and I talked a little bit about tonight's work, and that you all are going to do the heavy lifting. So we're here to guide you on that. Really, Catherine's going to keep us all honest is what's going to happen. I will kind of walk you through some of the exercises. One of the most important things that you can do as a board is to come together to learn. So I will echo Catherine's comments and say thank you for being here. I am a 15-year veteran board member. I live in Muscatine, and I was on my Muscatine board for 15 years, about half of that time as board president. And during the time of the pandemic as well, I always say if there was a course on that in college, I missed completing it, how to lead through a pandemic. I might have been talking, but that was a tough job. I am also incredibly passionate and incredibly grateful for the work you do. I know that sometimes you're not always greeted maybe with thank you, but you're leaders in your community, and your district is absolutely counting on you. So I appreciate the work that you do. For our audience tonight, this is what I call a fishbowl. So we're glad that you're here. Board meetings are held in the public, so it's great that you get to watch, and what an awesome opportunity to hear your board learn together. And I'm sorry, you're going to get to see either my best or worst side most of the night. I'll let you determine which side that is. So my apologies for that. I'm going to put you right to work. You all have a packet of information. One of the first things I like to point out is on the very first cover page is my very top secret cell phone number. So you all should giggle a little bit. The association is, we are here to serve members, which means y'all can reach out at any time. And when I was on the board, I did that a lot, and I didn't do it right away because I didn't know. So no one charges you when you call. You can email, you can text. If you text me, let me know who it is so I don't have to embarrassingly say, I don't have your number on my phone. But that's what we're here for, is to help you walk through questions that you have. Hey, I have XYZ situation. Will you help me? What does that look like? You'll probably hear me ask you, tell me what your policy says on XYZ topic. But that's part of what we do. So hang on to that information if you would. One of the first things I'd like to do is to get you all thinking a little bit, and you're going to talk to each other. So if that all of a sudden makes you nervous, by the way, you're still going to talk to each other. I've got a question on page 1 of your packet, and it says, what is your why? Why were you inspired to run for the board, spending your time and energies serving your community? And I want you to give that a little bit of thought. And friends, it's a lot of time and it's a lot of energies. I know that to be the case. I've been in your shoes, and it's not always easy, but you chose to do that. So I want you to think a little bit about that. It was lovely if you have an answer such as I did it for the students, but I'm going to push you harder. What about the students? Why did you want to do that for the students? So I want you to really give that some thought. Once you have that done, and you've jotted some notes to yourself, I'm going to give you some blank pieces of paper, and I want you to write your answer on a blank piece of paper, nice and big, and we've got some great colorful markers. When you have that done, then I'm going to give you your next assignment, okay? I'm feeling really generous. By the way, one of us is really nice, and one of us is less. You'll quickly figure out who it is. So I'm thinking about 2.5 minutes, all right, to give some thought to that, and then to write it on paper. What questions do you have for me before you start jotting to yourself? There are no wrong answers, by the way.
I mean, the board attorney is going to say there are some wrong answers.
Oh,
But we'll get to that later.
Fair. Should pay have been one of the reasons? That we might have to revisit that a little. Look at this, like jumping right in. sure you write nice and big on your piece of paper so my 29-year-old eyes can read it. That part was not funny, Joel. I'll tell you when it's funny.
Means you got on the school board at the age of 14.
And, we don't need to math tonight. Spelling does not count, by the way, if anyone's worried about their spelling.
My writing gets worse. Mine is terrible. So.
Once you have your piece of paper done, I want you to stand up, please. Not only do you have to do the hard work tonight, you have to go moving. All right. Once you have your piece of paper written, y'all might want to spread out just a tiny little bit, or you're going to be standing on top of each other. Here's what we're going to do. With the partner, you get about 2.5 minutes again. Joe and Dustin, you're going to share with each other your notes. Zach and Chris, Paul and Mike, Nick and Jolene. Okay? Go. You can't just trade them. You have to tell the person, this is human interaction.
Beneficial to the board. They have. Very good.
All right. Now we're going to do this very scientifically because you're going to trade partners. The person that has a birth month before the other person. So birth month is
April.
So which one comes first? You're going to rotate around, and whoever is rotating and rotating, so you'll have a new pair, and you're going to switch again. All right? And you get 2.5 minutes again.
Why is that?
A little more, come on.
Okay, did we get a share, everybody? Guess what we're going to do? One more time, except this time, whichever partner moved in, just keep moving along. So it's a little bit like volleyball, right? Just keep rotating. So whoever stood last time, stay still. Keep rotating around. I know Dustin was tough directions, right? But you've been, I know.
Steps in.
After high school. Two boys graduated from
Once you've shared, go ahead and grab a piece of tape and just kind of tape it around that question is fine. And then I'll let you sit down. The work's not done though. Paul, way too high. I'm kidding, it's fine. All right, now here's what I'm going to ask you to do next. Dustin, I'm going to start with you because I start to my right because I'm right-handed. I would like you to share what is something you heard, not about what you wrote. Tell me something that you heard one of your peers say to you.
That they want their children to have the same opportunities that they had growing up. Meaning the values that their school district brought. They want that for their kids.
Okay, Joe?
Had one person share with me, they wanted to make a difference for their own children and to share some of their skills in finance to make that happen.
Beautiful.
I heard to support our kids and to help bring business and opportunities to a rural district.
It's a great one.
Help support kids and community service.
I don't really have anything new to that.
That's okay.
Just to help educate their children and bring business to the area.
Okay.
I can't add that much to it either, but it's a lot of things. The biggest thing is, I think the biggest thing that I heard was discussed with almost everybody here. The primary thing being that all kids have an opportunity to get what we had or better.
That everybody wanted to be involved and help out their community and in their own way.
Again, I'm echoing a lot of what they said, but yes, just to give kids the opportunity and kids and grandkids just to continue the education we have.
So what I hear you saying is you all have a lot of the same reasons that you chose to do this work. None of you said for the great pay. We live in the wrong state for that, friends. But it sounds like a lot of similarities in what you shared. Maybe a little bit different way, a little different lens, but same similarities. That sound about right? I didn't get to hear everybody, so I'm anxious to go read them. Catherine, I think you have a piece you're going to add.
Yeah, well, when I was given the opportunity to share a little bit about my background and introduce myself, I focused on my firm. You know, we are a larger firm. We all have various specialties. But for me personally, I grew up in rural Iowa. I went to a district where my mom was on the school board and went through some challenging stages, including consolidating into one building. And I graduated with less than 50 kids. I stayed in Iowa for all my school. I'm staying in Iowa for my entire career, and I'm here and doing schoolwork because I believe in public education. And I heard a lot of echoes just in here about thinking of your own experiences, or maybe your parents or your kids who have now graduated or grandkids. I'm really happy to hear all this because you actually have a board policy describing qualifications to serve on the school board. And it states that individuals who are willing to serve on the board should believe public education is important. You all nailed that one. Support the democratic process. That's what we're doing tonight. Willingly devote time and energy to board work. Again, check 2. Respect educators and have the ability to examine the facts and make a decision. The board believes an individual considering a position on the school board should possess these characteristics. So I think you've all shown your qualifications for the board, and you've all shown that a lot of people in this room, probably a lot of the public that are attending too, have some overlapping interests in your community. And that's really good. You know, you're not here at kind of an empty board meeting. You're here because your community is interested in your work. And again, you're all in compliance with your board policy 202.1 regarding qualifications. So that makes your board attorney happy.
And that's a perfect segue as we talk about policy, which is one of my next favorite topics. I'm not just saying that because you're here, is to talk a little bit about your governance role as a board member. I dragged this book with me because I reference it a lot. It's called The Governance Core. I am not a good reader. When I sit still and I read, guess what happens?
Read it 3 times.
In between really long blanks, Dustin, or as I say, sometimes we're checking for light leaks. I'm not a great reader. This book was introduced to me and I devoured it. 1, it's written in nice chunks. 2, it's written about us. And when I say us, I still consider myself a board member, even though I'm not. This is by Davis Campbell and Michael Fullen. If you've been to any IASB events in the past, 5 or 6 years, Michael Fullen has been a speaker for us. This is great. One of the things that it says early on in the book that I really like is it describes us as board members. And it gives us a little bit of a blanket description. But what it talks about is that traditionally, board members are wired to be doers. So in your community, I'm going to guess that many of you have been on the Booster Association for Fine Arts, for athletics, you have volunteered for every opportunity that comes along. If I went around the room and I said, listen, Dustin, something happened. They needed 300 cupcakes by 8 a.m. tomorrow. We're not going to have them. Okay, great. Thanks. Zach, the lacrosse coach, we had a little kerflunkle tonight. Can't make it to prep. Great. You don't know how to do lacrosse, but you'll figure it out. Thanks. Chris, listen, there was an issue with the bus and we need to, you got it? Thanks, I appreciate that. Oh, and Paul, we're out of chocolate milk in the drinking fountain. Can you okay, perfect. Before I would even finish my sentence, each one of you would go, yeah, I'll do it. Now you might not really do it. You might pick up the phone and figure out who do I know that can do that. But it's how you're wired. It's what we do. And when I'm not comfortable doing something else, guess what I and the rest of us as humans revert back to doing? You ask me to step outside of my comfort zone and it's not so comfortable. Where do I step back to very quickly? What I know is comfortable, the doing. When you come together and you sit around the board table, you aren't doers anymore. You're at this governance, this really high level. I think of it as air traffic control. What is air traffic control's number one, I'm guessing, their number one priority? Safety. What else?
I was just saying, keep planes from running into each other.
Keep planes from running into each other, because what happens when planes run into each other? And people perish. Yes, it's a big deal. So if I went to air traffic control and asked for my ticket to be reticketed because somehow you accidentally put me in a middle seat and I don't do middle seats. I need to be on the end. What would air traffic control say to me? Would they reticket me?
No,
Why not?
it's not within the rules.
Does that mean they're not helpful? Does it mean they're not kind humans?
No.
Means they really are focusing on saving lives, right? And keeping planes. You all are air traffic control. You are focusing on this direction of our students. If you look at page 3 of your book, I took an excerpt out of, again, the Governance Core. It says, governance is the process where the direction of the organization is set, structure is established, and you have accountability, all assured. Those are huge responsibilities of what you have come together to do. And you all may have a different way that you want to do it. So when we really focus on that really, really high level, and Catherine gave us a great sneak peek under the tent because we are going to talk about policy. I have a couple of numbers written on the right-hand side of your page, and then there's a big blank so that you can write in the answer. So that first number is 9,921,417. If you're thinking about your work at a governance level, what would you guess that number might be?
That's our budget.
Well, that was very good. No one ever guessed on the first guess. What part of your budget, Zach?
Probably the general fund.
It's your general fund. So put a $sign behind it and write general fund. While you're writing that, I want you to think to yourself, how many of your peers do you know that manage a 9.9, friends, that's $10 million. How many of your peers manage a $10 million budget? That's more than I have in my checking account.
Same.
Like by about 10 million. It's a lot of money. Oh, and by the way, I was not a finance expert. Like after 15 years, I know enough to be dangerous. And you have really smart people who give you a lot of the piece of information you need, but you are the board. At the end of the day, it's your $10 million that you are responsible for. And to Zach's point, that's just your general fund. That's not even all your dollars. It's a huge number. All right, 706. What might you guess that
Number
is?
of students we serve.
It's beautiful. Friends, nobody ever gets this quick. So Paul said students you serve. What's the important keyword there?
Serve.
And why is that important?
Because that's our job.
It is. It's also important that you're looking at serve because I'm going to guess that you probably have some students that open enroll out. Clearly, they would be crazy to do that. You also probably have lots of students that open enroll in. That served number, if I open enroll out, that served number is not included, right? So when you talk about those 706, right? There's a dollar amount that you get from the state per student, right? And we just had that count the first of the month, right? Where the state says today's the cutoff. Here's what it is. So as a board, watching what your open enroll in and your open enroll out looks like becomes a really, really important piece of that story. If you ever asked me as a board member if I knew those numbers off the top of my head, I didn't. But I always look to my superintendent to say, is our trend okay? What does our trend look like? Or I would look to my SBO to say, what does that trend look like? Because that tells you a lot. All right, 150. What might you guess that is? Y'all aren't gonna guess.
I'd say employees.
There you go. So 150 staff members. Again, how many of your peers are responsible? $10 million budget, 706 students, 150 employees. Who's the largest employer in your town?
Us.
I would say.
Or the
It's
hospital.
the school district or the hospital, one or the other.
I'm guessing us.
So you may be one or two, but nonetheless, a huge responsibility when you think about it, this governance level, the pieces that you do. So it's really, really important. I share these numbers with you not really to give you a quiz, but to help bring just a bit of a picture of it's a huge responsibility that you signed up for and a big piece of what you do. And when I was a new board member, I remember somebody saying to me at times, so how much is your budget? I was like, oh, somewhere between 10 million or $10 and like, I don't know, 100 million, gazillion. I don't know. And so being able to put some perspective to that becomes really important. All right, I'm gonna feel lucky. I mean, you just blew right through these first three. I'm thinking this 336 might be a little bit harder, but maybe not. What would you guess 336 is?
Number of districts in Iowa.
That's a beautiful guess and almost close. That's almost the right number, but not quite. But I love it. I love that you're willing to guess out loud. What else? This is a safe space, friends. I'll give you a hint. We've talked about it already tonight. Catherine may have mentioned it. It's the P word.
Policies.
336 is the number of sample IASB policies. You have somewhere in your responsibility of what you do, somewhere in the neighborhood of 336. You may have a whole bunch more. The piece that's really important about that is your policy is your voice. It is the voice of the board. Your policy, I think of your policy a little bit like your playbook. I used to say to myself, before I would answer a question that someone asked me, in my head, I was saying, do we have a policy on that? Do we have a policy that guides me on either how I answer or that gives me the answer? And by the way, guess where all your policies are? And guess where else they are?
On the website.
They're on your website because I read through a whole bunch of them, which is great because that means your community can look at them too. And that's what most districts do. So that if I have a question, I can say, I wonder what your policy says about that. Much like what Catherine read. Hey, your policy says, here are the things, here's what we look for in a board member. What a beautiful reference to that. So your policy, there's a lot of great stuff. Now I will also say, please don't be mad. You don't have to know, that was really funny. I mean, it really was funny that I asked you to turn it up. All right. I'm not suggesting that you have every single policy memorized, but I am really strongly suggesting that you always know where to go find them. Or when I had a question, I would pick up my phone and I would immediately text my board secretary, do we have a policy about fundraising? Do we have a policy about, and man, I'd have that thing before I'd even finish my task. Perfect. So that you know where to go find it. Or maybe you're asking Joe, do we have a policy on XYZ? Beautiful. Sometime, if you read through your 100 and 200 series policies though, it would be really beautiful for you all, because guess who that's a lot about? It's about you. So.
Well, and I'll say two things on that note. First of all, your policies, they do come from the board, but almost all of them are based on legal authority straight out of Iowa code. So think of your policies as cheat code. You don't need to call the district's attorney when you're appropriately applying an existing policy based on statute. I also, in your materials, page 23, here's a list of all the things on your guys' to-do list. Okay, so all of these responsibilities we're talking about, and you don't have to turn there right now. Just look at how long this page is. And each one has a different code section, a lot of them in 279 and 280, explaining where in Iowa code it says that the board may do X, may do Y. Your policies also at the bottom of them reference those provisions in code. So, hey, why are we doing things this way? Question one, do we have a policy on it? Question two, is that policy grounded in Iowa statute? If that's the case, you are doing it because the law either permits or requires you to do so. So that's the why. Outside of that, the decision-making within those guidelines and statutes, that's where you guys come in. That's where your individual motivations for serving on this board come in. You operate within the statute and within your policies, and then that's you, and that's your decisions. And that's a pretty big thing for $10 million, 700 and some students, 150 employees. I don't know about you, this is a pretty long list of to-dos. So thank you again for serving today.
I always say to boards as well that if you have a policy that you don't like, you're the board. Change it. Semicolon. Please check with your legal counsel to make sure you're not inadvertently changing something, as was just clearly stated. Most of those policies are what the law says. I like to say, I don't wear orange well, and I just can't do a jumpsuit. As much as 3 square meals a day and some quiet reading time would be nice, it's important, right? Know what that recommendation, know what the law says, look at your policy, and then as a board, talk about it. Where does your work as a board happen? The physical work, where does it physically happen?
At the meetings.
When you are what?
in session,
In session.
And you are all
communicating.
together, communicating, right? If you don't have a quorum, can you have a meeting?
No.
Do you have a policy that tells you that?
Yes.
Yes.
So you have a policy that also says you follow Robert's Rule of Order. Robert's Rule of Order also says we function when there is a quorum present, right? Which is the only time that individually as board members, we got nothing. We have no power. Somebody can name drop all they want, but doesn't mean a thing. Until we all come together and we sit at this table and have great conversation, and you talk about your minutes and you approve your hires and you talk about who's going to graduate, you approve your graduating list and you approve your calendar, all the important things you do, that's where this happens. So the governance core also talks about your work as being steering the ship. You're steering a $10 million ship. Who's doing the rowing for you?
The staff.
Management.
And Joe's guiding that, right? He's guiding that rowing. If any of you leave your steering post, because I'm out, it's too hard. I want to be a doer. I know how to do that stuff. I don't want to steer. Or quite frankly, I'm mad at somebody and I'm not standing next to you to steer any longer. I'm going to go row. Who will steer in your place if you leave?
Well, the board actually appoints somebody that actually appoints and votes on it. If somebody decides to resign.
True. If I just though I'm not going to resign. I'm just this steering business. It's not for me. No one can steer in your place. You were elected to steer. So if you walk away and you say, I can't steer tonight, or I want to go put the chocolate milk in the drinking fountain, no one can steer in your place. What you do is you leave your team. And as a team, including Joe, y'all need each other to function together. All right, here's your next activity. And this time I'm going to switch you around for partners. You have on page 4 a fancy T-chart that talks about governance. Being on the left, it's the role of the board. You have management, which is the role of the superintendent on the right. I'm going to give you about 4 minutes, and I want you to come up with as many things as possible. I'm going to partner you up. I want you to come up with as many things as possible for one side of that chart, and I'm going to assign you which side. Okay? So I'm going to partner you up. So Dustin, I'm going to put you with Jolene. Nick, I'm going to put you with Joe. Mike, I'm going to put you with Zach. I have to think about this so that I mix everybody up. And Paul, I'm going to put you with Chris. All right? Dustin and Jolene, y'all are going to talk about, I want you to do the board side. What are all the things that the board needs to do? Nothing is too small. So what are the tasks, the things, what is the responsibility of the board? Policies is one of them. All right, to get you started. Nick and Joe, I'm giving you the board because I'm not going to give you the superintendent because he'd give you all the answers. And then I'm going to do the other 2 teams. I'm going to have you do the superintendent side. Okay? So I'm going to give you 4 minutes. You might have to get up. You might have to move around. Even though your chairs don't have wheels, we can pull them around, right? Or move around and work with your partner. Fill out your list. And then we're going to come back. And I'm going to set my timer for 4 minutes. You'll hear the duck quack.
You got an extra chair
Oh, you're fine.
I don't know that we really, I don't know. I thought that would be more like a teacher. Okay.
I'll just write it down. Yes.
Okay. I think kind of look at where you want to be. Targets is long term, where you hope to go.
How do I want to say this? Good. Yes.
Stay within budget, stay in a budget, I guess.
You're right.
I good. Which I apologize, I should have asked you. It's okay, it will come back. But this is what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, any change that we need to complete.
Revival.
Yep.
Leadership to act on behalf of. Right. So leadership.
What's that?
No, I'm just thinking outside of here.
Yeah.
We are.
Be flexible. Right.
We're in the phase.
Accommodating.
You got to do
That's
that.
not just really. It is.
Yeah.
As this is taking my jacket off, I'm at like.
This is my, this is my standard trademark is this. That's my picture is what I do with shots.
We don't actually, I don't know how to say that, but we don't actually, it's your reputation. You can say that. You're still trying to say, I mean, we have to sign off for all of our staff. Yes.
To the community.
Super reputation.
You know what I mean?
There's the duck. I wasn't kidding when I said the duck would quack. All right, got your list? Yes,
Yes.
you all should be less interactive. It would be helpful to Catherine and I. So here's what you're gonna do. Let's see, soup, right? Board. So one of you will swap because here's what you need to do. Those of you that did the board piece, you need to go share with your friends who only did the soup piece so that they can learn from you. Those of you that did the soup piece, you need to go share with your board. So only one of you from each of the team. Look, Dustin's already up. He's like, all right. So who are you kicking out? Kick somebody out. Send somebody over here. Zach's like, I'm going. I'm on the move, he
You're gonna
says.
you're gonna just take them down.
I should have told you, I'll be sure y'all take notes, huh? And then between you two, somebody has to switch. Oh, very smart, Zach.
Things and stuff.
I like it.
No, I know, I gotta switch, we have to. So I would you. So.
Joe?
Okay.
Okay. You were describing your job, Joe.
Okay.
So hire staff, policy, here's the budget, rules, delegation, inspires. Public perception, positive, smooth, approachable, functional, communicate, flexible, accommodating,
successful to the board at the beginning.
We were just talking about policies, like hiring, what the numbers of policies changed. Our administration. Budget. Guidance.
We are, this is me, I didn't realize.
It's pretty simple. Say this to
Shows hiring. Yes.
Hey, did you teach your partner? Did your partner take it? Your partner might want notes. I'm just saying. You both might want notes if you don't have it. You could do what Zach did and you could take a picture. It's pretty smart.
use our technology.
That's right, use your technology.
Board secretary or super recommendation.
Wait a second. Look to see if mine doesn't. Perfect.
Thank you, Mom.
I'm gonna take a picture. Take a picture of myself, that's not what I want.
Both of them.
Actually,
There you go. I'll
there's
have
something
all
like
the-
Jolene's taking a selfie.
It's quite that.
Like a medicine bottle, I need that place in my life. What did I keep saying? That's what I do.
Take a picture.
3 or 4 about that.
All right, do you have your list done? Are you good?
Yep.
Okay, you can go back to your original seats if you want to do that. Tell me what you had for the board side, friends. Shout them out to me. What's the board responsible for?
Set policies.
Setting policies, okay?
The budget,
What about the budget?
make sure it's balanced.
Oversee it, make sure it's balanced, make sure you're not overspending, right? Do you have to know where every dime was spent?
No.
No, but it's really good to have a year over year, a month over month, right? What does it look like? Knowing not to panic. I don't know about you all in Muscatine, it got pretty skinny looking in about July, right? Before property taxes come due and knowing, yeah, that's okay. This is how this happens. That's what it looks like. All right, what else?
Bargaining,
Okay. What else?
tax levy,
Oh, that's a really good one. The tax levy. What do you do with a tax levy?
Set it so we prove it, what it's supposed to be set at.
Please know I am not encouraging you to raise your tax levy. However, can you all make that decision, board, whether you raise it or whether you lower it, whether you're buying down your levy?
yes.
Yes.
At this meeting, not right now at this meeting, when you are all together, you can make that decision. It can greatly impact your community. You should look at what your city council has the ability to do from a tax perspective, because it doesn't work quite the same for them. $10 million, 700 and some students, 105 employees, and you impact your tax levy. That's a big deal. Nobody ever brings that up. It's always on my list. You guys are stellar tonight. What else?
Short-term, long-term goals.
Beautiful. Goal setting's really important. It's part of setting the direction, right?
Dustin, did you study? Because that's right on my big list for responsibilities.
Thanks for sending me that email.
Yeah. I like the studying. Excellent education.
What else?
Create/change policy if needed.
And if you're gonna change your policy, what are you gonna do,
Check the
Dustin?
law.
And
Check the law.
yeah.
So you're gonna ask
The attorney.
Yeah.
I assume she's the law.
Yep, yes, yes. I have to make sure I give proper credit. What happens when there are changes in the law that require changes in your policy?
It's usually brought before us to approve in a meeting or in a board meeting.
Yep. If I said policy primer, friends, it's okay if you say no, that means nothing. Does that ring any bells? Policy primer, yes. So you all subscribe to a service through IASB that is policy primer. It's spelled like primer, but you say primer. I'd still like a really good answer on that. I can't find that one out. And we will send you, we have an attorney on staff who crafts to meet the law that says, here's what this looks like. And we send them to you for you to decide if you would like to adopt them. I always like to say, it doesn't matter whether she likes said law or not. Our responsibility is to write a policy to protect you so you are operating within the realm of the law. Because there may be times I don't like that. Well, the law says, that's when you call Catherine and you go, I don't want to do this. And she says, okay, so here's all the trouble you're going to get in, right? Or please don't do that because we don't want to spend that much time together. That's what she'll say. So that's important. So because things change, right? So that's how you will get fed those. All right, what else?
Rehire the administrator,
Of whom do you hire?
the superintendent, or I think you can hire lawyers.
Board
if you need to oversee the financial side of things.
Okay, so you have one employee, it is your superintendent. You are also responsible to evaluate your superintendent once a year. Do you know why?
It's required by law.
It is
Board
required by
policy.
law and by board policy. And as good humans, we owe that to each other to help each other grow. Okay, so that's good. The board does appoint. You do appoint a board secretary. You do appoint a attorney of record. You usually establish who your news media of record will be. You establish who your banking financial institutions of record are. You do all of that. My experience has been I do that in an organizational meeting. Are you doing that tonight or is that later? Okay, perfect. So you'll see that later. Beautiful. What else?
I don't know if this is right. Do we set the curriculum or I don't know what word I'm looking for. Meaning, like we said, no, I'm blanking. I can't remember what I was
Curriculum's a really good
like
one to
that, but
talk about. Can we talk about curriculum?
Sure.
What's the board's role in curriculum?
To approve it. Not to-
just to approve it.
Because traditionally, it's been researched by those that are educators, that's what they have done, spent their life doing, and are doing the research. They understand what meets code. They understand what will help students learn. They understand if it meets the specific credit requirements that are needed, right? That doesn't mean that we just go, oh yeah, we approve, right? Because guess what? If you get new curriculum board, guess what else Joe might be asking for with new curriculum?
More staff,
Maybe more staff or more what else?
money.
Yeah. So my question was always, what do you need from us? What do you need from the board to do? And he may say, well, we need to tap into that $10 million, right? Or we need X. Here's what that's going to look like. Because crazy thing is nothing is free.
I'm glad you brought up curriculum, and you do policy 602.1 discusses curriculum development. So it's right there. So if you're wondering, well, what is my role? It is right in policy. And it describes a systemic approach to curriculum development, specific factors to be considered, how those proposals come to the board. The responsibility to continue to revise and progress on the curriculum, and it's got the legal references for why we have that policy in place, which includes not only our Iowa code provisions, but also the federal regulations that further dictate this. You are a recipient of some federal funds. You need to follow federal law. I feel very confident in providing this advice to you in a public setting. You need to follow federal law. When we talk about closed sessions and sessions with legal counsel, that's more to protect the confidence, the attorney-client privilege with the district. But here, I'm okay with the whole world knowing I'm telling you to follow federal law. Okay.
Question. So on page 23, how come curriculum and, would you say, board, or 600 policy? 600 something?
Yes, in your board's policy, it's references 6021.
Okay.
You also may have a tiny little primer update on that one that does not, it changes nothing of the meaning of anything that Catherine just said, but there are a few updates to that, I believe. So Dustin, I'm really glad you brought that up. Curriculum's good. It's a great one. What else do you do? Board, what else are you responsible for?
Planning, building projects?
Okay, so facilities,
Disciplinary action on students,
tell me more about disciplinary action.
expulsion, deciding whether to expel or not.
Those aren't fun. Those are tough. What else?
Set the schedule for the
Calendar?
calendar.
Absolutely. And are you, board, are you setting those days or do you get a recommendation?
We get a recommendation.
How much wiggle room is there in the recommendation you get?
Not that
We're not
much.
given much. And it's not from the recommendation, it's what's required by the state.
There it is,
There it
by
is.
law again. When I first started as a board member, yeah, there was a rule about when you could start, but you could request a waiver and you could start when everybody could get a waiver, right? Well, then all of a sudden that changed. So now we all start on the same day, fine. And there, I guess the law also says there's supposed to be either so many hours or so many days in the school year, right? So, okay, well, there's another piece. Now you have to figure out some of those pieces about where do you put in the winter break, where do you put in the spring holiday, and then crazy. Are y'all on semesters?
Yes.
So you're supposed to have it evenly divided, like the same number of days in both semester. Okay, y'all can laugh. I didn't always know that. When I was a new board member, I'm like, oh, there is math to that. So there are only a few things, right? Sometimes depending on how the holiday falls, you can move some of those pieces around. So approving the calendar is really, really important though, and it does need to be done by the board. But you also only have so much leeway. And I'm gonna guess that Joe's got a well thought out process on how he brings that to you. Probably run it through staff, maybe through a SIAC committee, right? Some that have looked at it to say, yep, for what we have to work with, this is what we like. Okay? What else?
What type of committee did you say?
SIAC,
You may have
Student
a
Improvement Advisory Committee.
Okay.
Catherine would tell us we have to do that.
You also
We
have a
have one.
policy on it. I mean,
We
that's true,
approve.
but also kind of funny, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of policies here.
At least 336-ish. All right, what else?
We approved extracurricular activities.
Okay, as far as if we're gonna add lacrosse, because Zach signed up to coach, he said. Okay,
Bowling.
okay.
Shooting schools.
Girls wrestling.
And those are driven by, so girls wrestling's a great example.
Student interest.
And also, who said that now it's going to be a sanctioned sport?
The Iowa Athletic Association.
Right, so again, some of those pieces, right, come down to us, which is beautiful. That's a great one. How about your agenda? Who does your agenda? Board?
President and superintendent.
And ultimately, board, it's your agenda. I think of your agenda as a little bit like breathing. We all just do it, but it's your agenda, board. You are responsible. In this case, Paul's responsible working with Joe to do that. My experience has been I have very little to do with the agenda because, again, there are certain things that have to happen during certain times of the year, right? And unless y'all want to be here until midnight every time you meet, it's also a little bit of that spacing those pieces out. But the agenda is really important. How about being able to just run an effective meeting? Whose responsibility is that?
All of ours.
All of ours.
It is. And Iowa code will tell you, you are a meeting in the public. You are not a meeting of the public. You have to be able to conduct your work in a manner that lets you have conversation with each other, because this is where the work happens, right? You can't go down to Casey's or the local grocery store and just meet in the produce aisle and have a quick meeting. Catherine would frown upon that. Fair statement? Or even if 4 of you did that, right? So that piece of having your meeting in the public, which by the way reminds me, what if we wanted to do a closed session like right now? Could we do it? And I've got some stuff I don't want to say out loud.
It's got on the agenda.
Not unless it's on the agenda. Why does it have to be on the agenda?
Otherwise, it violates open meetings.
So whose responsibility is it to know open meeting law?
Everybody on this board needs to.
I'm going to go back to that orange isn't my color. I don't want to wear a jumpsuit. You do. Open meeting law, friends, is your responsibility. There are 12 reasons in the state of Iowa that you can have a closed session. 4 of them have to do with education. 4. Fun little fact about open meeting law. When might you guess open meeting law became a thing? What year? All guesses are welcome. It's a safe space. Throw out what you got.
It's been probably 40 years.
Forever, 40 years.
1900s.
1900s.
I'm gonna say 1920.
1920. Ooh, these are great guesses. Anybody else? What if I said 40 years ago is about how long? What year would that have been? Roughly?
1982. Yeah.
So what if it was closer to 50 years ago? What year would that have been, roughly?
70s.
So what happened in, say, the mid-70s? I was barely old enough to remember. I've read about it on the History Channel.
It's brought into place because of Watergate.
Winner, winner! It is a product of Watergate when it was decided that the business of the public should be done in the presence of the public, which is really, really important, which is why Catherine would never let me have closed session. But friends, it is really important. You will look to Joe, you will look to your board secretary to say, remind me what are the rules. You have an agenda because you want transparency, because the law says how far in advance do you have to put an agenda out before you meet?
24 hours.
24 hours. If you put it out 48, that's even better. If you have an emergency, can you meet sooner?
Yes.
The boiler is broken and we cannot have school tomorrow if we do not have the board approved to spend X amount of dollars to go buy a new one. Absolutely.
I'd be real careful on that one. I was in a lot of calls when derecho hit a couple of years ago and it was the week school was going to start. I think that qualifies as an emergency. I think, hey, we're all here together. This would be convenient. Someone left something off the agenda, or even it looks like we're going to have some staff shortages. What do we do about that? I'm not convinced that's going to be the emergency that gets out of that 24-hour period. I mean, the trend, especially recently, is really emphasizing the importance of giving the public the option to participate. So we'll spend a lot of time discussing closed session, how you get into it, if it's appropriate to be in closed session, but it's just as important that you're only acting on action items also on your agenda. It would be inappropriate to just add on action items last minute, because then the public who may have had an interest in that item doesn't get the 24-hour notice that they're entitled to. And if you think about it, 24-hour notice that's pretty quick. We've got some changes about like Fridays versus a Sunday. I mean, we can talk about what 24 hours is if necessary, but the purpose is to give your community the opportunity to come if they're interested in hearing the deliberations and what goes into that. So Robert's rule is not fun, but it is part of policy. It is what's worked for governments at various levels, local, state, and federal. And the reason we apply it and the reason you want a board secretary and board president particularly well-versed in Robert's rule is so that you as a board do not inadvertently step into something such as an open meetings violation.
So let's talk about that a second.
Sure.
Let's say a board member throws something out, throws a motion out, it's not on the agenda.
Yeah, so
What will transpire after that?
So part of a board president and board secretary, and I know Joe's sitting in as your board secretary and helping out, but this is a lift, which is why part of the plan tonight is to discuss that. I looked at your agenda, which was a very nice, thorough agenda, by the way. But if there's a matter that comes out and is out of order, then the board president or board secretary should just say, well, that's out of order. The motion on the floor is X. We need a second. Then you can have a discussion. Then you vote. If there's a related motion, it could be brought up if you're still under an agenda item. Otherwise, it's the most appropriate way to handle that is if you're discussing other business or new business, to make the comment, but then the action might not take place until the next meeting. If it's a particularly pressing matter, you can have a special meeting. I'm not saying wait a month. I'm just saying give your public the chance to know, hey, this is going to come up. And it was raised and, this is our posted agenda and there is or is not an action item. I don't know if this is a good or a bad example, but the state legislature will go back into session in January. It's a really good way to learn Robert's rule. It's just watching those floor debates because it happens all the time. Objection not germane. I encourage you to watch it later in session. They kind of, they use procedures to avoid using traditional Robert's rules, and your board should really stick to the more traditional ones. Again, so that board members and your public can follow along. Because it does nobody any good to do things either improperly or out of order or where the public is not able to follow along. I'd also add that depending on the action, if it was taken improperly, that board action could be challenged. There's a couple different ways to challenge a board action. There's an administrative 290 appeal, Iowa Code 290 appeal that goes to the Department of Ed. There's also district court challenges. This is generally speaking, it would depend on the situation. But I love working for school districts, but if your public is upset because we didn't follow the law and they challenge a board action, you find yourself spending more time with district council. And there could be consequences like overturning a board action or consequences like a finding that there was an open meetings violation or something else, which I think deteriorates public trust and confidence in your board. So that's why we are such sticklers about these rules. Even if it's very tempting to be a little bit more efficient, we're sticklers because if we're all playing by the same rules all the time, every meeting, then it's fair to your fellow board members and the public, and you're meeting the expectations of law. That'll teach you to ask the lawyer a question. Because get me on the clock here, okay?
I got something to say to that, and I'm sure this was about me. And I'm sure you maybe seen the video of our meeting.
I go to a lot of board meetings. I may have been double booked, but I have to say that tonight, I promise, I have this for so many of my boards because it's the same for everybody across the state. And that's why we're in a public work session, because I say the same to everyone. So no, it's not directed at any
I just have a
particular
question.
event.
on something, I guess, if it can be answered. So this happened last month, and it come down, we got done talking about a petition, and it was quickly, made a motion to close the meeting, and then a quick second, and I had more to discuss, so I started talking again, and I wanted to discuss what maybe we could do with that. But, and I said, I had made here's what I said, can we still have discussion after, let me just read this. We have a motion by Zach and seconded by Mike to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor say aye, and I interrupted. And I said, can we still have discussion? And Mr. Birdie said, say that again, and I said, can we still have discussion? And then I said, the petition filed per Iowa Code 279.8B, which is exactly on the agenda. I repeated exactly what it was. And I asked to move that the question be referred to a committee made up of members, myself, Jansen, and Dutcher. And then he was unclear of the motion, so I started to say it again. And I wanted to refer to a committee to create a committee made up of board members. Then I was interrupted by the president saying that before you move on with that, in my opinion, this is a meeting or a violation of the open meeting law. If you attempt to make a motion on something that's not on the agenda, but I stated exactly what was on the agenda. I just want to make sure that I do something wrong.
So you're currently in an open session now asking a specific legal question
Okay.
to your district's attorney. It would be inappropriate for me to answer because the district is owed my confidence in providing that specific analysis. What I can say is the previous information in the packet, I would apply this information, the statutes and the law reference to make that analysis. I'm just not going to give direct legal advice in an open session because I owe the district client confidence.
Sure. Okay. So how do I go about seeing if I'm right or not right or wrong or
So there.
to make sure I can.
Gosh, I hope you let me
fix
come
this.
back, but there is in fact a policy. You do have a policy. I don't have the one in front of me, but it also is when you discuss the board's decision to appoint legal counsel for the board. That's also on your agenda tonight.
Yeah.
I'm hoping. And your existing policy says regardless of whom the board has directed to serve in that role, there is a list of individuals who are authorized to communicate directly with counsel on behalf of the board. Because the other thing is, and let's be real here, you've got a $10 million budget, but you don't need everyone in your community calling the district's lawyer. So
Sure.
there is a policy on who can call.
Yeah.
And you can communicate, if you're not one of those 3 listed people, you can communicate with one of the people who are to get the information.
Okay.
And that way it protects the district as a body if there is a concern. And then correction would look just like, anything like this. Because here's the thing, we're not here to demand perfection. We're here to demand good faith compliance.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
that's what today's discussion is about.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I was confused and I just wanted to make sure what I did was right or wrong. So I know. That's it. Do you have anything on that?
One, I think it's great that you talk about it. It's hard, and I would speak from my previous experience as a board member, it's hard sometimes to hold each other accountable because I didn't always like to be the person saying, you can't say that. Because it's uncomfortable, right? We don't like to do that. But if you, what I would lead you back to is if you have a motion on the floor and Robert's rule says you have a motion on the floor, you got to do something, right, with that motion. It's also the time when not knowing what was on your agenda, is it an action item, right? If it's not an action item, this is where you kick me if I say the wrong thing. If it's not an action item, I can't take any action on it. And it gets back to that piece of transparency as well. Sometimes that's a learning curve, right? And sometimes it's saying, hey, we have a motion on the floor and y'all got to be willing to say to each other, Jolene, we got a motion on the floor, we got to do X. Okay. If you really wanted to say, I want to dive into Robert's rule, a really great resource I found when I was in your shoes was my FFA group. Because they're pretty amazing. They'll teach you way more than you might want to know, but even just to say, run us through some basics. I used to get tripped up on somebody wanted to table something and I'm like, can't we just somebody make the motion and then nobody second it and it'll just fail for lack? Oh no, that's not how it works. So what does that look like? What does it mean to table it if we're gonna talk about it at the next meeting? But it's a great learning opportunity as a board or even a refresher to say, hey, can somebody give us a 30-minute high-level overview on the rough, the high-level piece of Robert's Rule to understand that a little bit better. So that's the piece that I will address. If there's a motion on the floor, Robert's Rule says you got to take care of that motion. And again, board members, it's okay. It's okay to say, Zach, I think we just stepped in the weeds. We got to come up, right? I will also say, if you find yourself in a closed session and you veered off a topic a little bit of where you were, you said you were going to go in to just have an evaluation, and all of a sudden we start talking about the lacrosse coach. Somebody needs to say, please don't put your board secretary in an awkward position. Somebody just needs to say, oh, friends, we just stepped out. We got to get back on. Okay. No, it happens. So, okay. So you auto correct each other. But I would encourage you to keep that conversation up and to hear those things. And it's okay. It's okay if your audience says, hey, we can't take, or it's okay for your audience to hear you say, hey, we can't take a motion. We have a motion on the floor. Okay. Nobody's a horrible person. It just means,
I have been in that closed session where we go in to discuss what somebody holler out a closed session. I think I heard student expulsion one time.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask
Yeah.
about. I was gonna ask, now, if it's close, if it's a student disciplinary action.
Yeah.
That doesn't have to be posted 24 hours in advance, correct?
It should be.
It
It's
should
still
be?
closed session. You still
Okay.
convene the meeting. You still vote to go into closed session. And so maybe that's the only thing on your agenda is vote to close session, and then action item in open session is recommendation regarding discipline of the student. So that still does need to be
Okay,
posted.
I was just
Which
asking that.
adjusts your timelines when it comes to student discipline. And there's a policy.
Because usually they're suspended until.
Sure, but you still need to
disciplinary action
post
is
the
done.
agenda and vote. And I have been in that closed session where it's discussing a student disciplinary matter, and somebody starts talking about a different student who may have had information or been involved. And either me or another board member say, hey, we got to stay laser focused on this discipline issue. That in and of itself isn't, boom, you've got a open meetings violation and now everybody's in trouble. No, the way the code is written is for your board as a whole to self-correct. So when you immediately recognize and redirect to the appropriate topic of the closed session, that's how it's supposed to work. And I think that's nice. You all have each other to rely on. Nobody's an island out here.
We had some discussion about special meetings. Is there such a thing as a normal amount of special meetings in a year's time, or does it just depend on?
All right, I'm in my 10th year doing school law, and 3 years ago I would have been like, oh yeah, 1 or 2 a year is normal. But then COVID hit, and so no, there is no standard. You still just have to follow your posting requirements. You still just have to follow your Robert's Rule and all of that. It's still, that long list of responsibilities that I mentioned, it should still generally fall in that. Tammy is in the middle of her role of the board versus role of the superintendent, and I know she's getting there, but you as a board have all these huge, what do we want out of our school? What do we want out of our community? What goals do we have? And then how do we, put in policy those visions? And how do we direct the superintendent to fulfill those visions? And on and on and on. What am I doing with my hands? Coming down into a triangle here. This triangle in the middle here is your superintendent. And then your superintendent has to go explain to the teaching staff, explain to students, explain to everybody else how to fulfill your vision.
It's an hourglass.
It's an hourglass. Thank you. Art was my worst subject. So this is the best I got tonight. And I think when she's describing the roles of the board, think about okay, so all those roles are going to filter down to one person, the superintendent. But then you expect your superintendent looking at you, Joe, to then push that out to others. If you start dropping directly down and bypassing your superintendent, not only are you gonna make more work for yourself, but there's 7 of you. So imagine if you're a student or a teacher and you're getting 7 or 8 different directions. That is tough. That is tough. And so that's why we have this approach. That's why we have like sort of a team aspect instead of an individual aspect. I'm sorry, I'm stepping on
No,
your.
it's perfect.
your
It's perfect
toes here.
conversation. Because you know, it fits right into thinking just about chain of command. I consider Muscatine to be a small town. You know everybody, when you can't go anywhere without somebody stops you, right? And it would be just as easy for me to say, gee, I just drove by the high school and the football lights are on. I'm gonna text the director of facilities and just say, Jeff, the lights are on. Do you just want me to run in and shut them off for you real quick? Which I could do, but your chain of command will tell you, much like what the beautiful hourglass that Catherine just alliterated, it's getting that information to Joe, right? Not because we're trying to tattle, not because we don't want to be helpful, because then Joe can make the phone call. Because guess what happens, board members? If one of you called my director of facilities, Jeff, or if I called Jeff and said, hey, no rush, just wanted to let you know that light bulb, it's out. You're a board member. What's Jeff gonna do? He's a director of facilities. I just told him he had a light bulb out somewhere. What's he most likely gonna do?
Fix it.
How fast?
If you said it's not a rush, Lord knows when it gets fixed.
Or he's gonna go, she's the board president, I better go do it. Right now, I'll stop everything else I'm doing, including the special project that Joe just gave me that has urgency, because Paul's already upset that there's not chocolate milk in the drinking fountain. Right? So for us to also understand what that's like, if we're just trying to be kind and we're just trying to help do something, but if we don't give that to Joe and follow our own chain of command, which guess what? It's outlined in something you might know about.
Board policy.
In your board policy that says, it's that piece of having a process. It's a piece of telling your community we are always consistent. If I'm on your board and you all always follow the rules, but I don't, and I just call Jeff directly, or I want to use the football stadium to have a sleepover for my nieces, because it's not a big deal, it's not like it's dangerous, and I just call in myself, what happens? What do I do to the relationship you all that we have together?
Change.
And also misuse of public resources and funds makes your district lawyer very upset. And you know, to that point, if Jeff,
Director of Facilities, yeah.
I'm sure Jeff does a fine job, but let's say you do tell your superintendent, hey, can you get Jeff out there? And I'd like it if these stadium lights could go down before 11. And every night it's after midnight. And you've repeatedly told your superintendent, you got to do something. And your superintendent isn't effectively managing, that comes up in the annual superintendent's evaluation. So it all still comes back around in terms of being able to appropriately manage and operate the district. So have no fear. It's all part of the plan. And it's in policy.
It's in policy. And it's hard though, because I know where to go flip the switch. It's like in my backyard. I could walk to it faster than I could call Joe, for gosh sakes. So it's not that I don't want to do it. It's not that, it's that piece about being consistent. Because otherwise Paul's going to call me and say, Tammy, you got to stop. No, you cannot use the sleepover. No, we're not doing that. How many times do I have to tell you? So that piece of really, really good communication is really important as well. Do you want to talk more about closed session? I feel like we just kind of like.
Yeah, just for purposes of time, I just don't want to go past that because, you know, there are primarily 4 reasons that you'll end up in closed session. It is in your notes. I know you guys are getting a little fatigued on quizzing, but let's see if you can help me out here. We've got for records that must or may remain confidential, right?
Property, purchase property.
We're going to get to that one in a minute. Nope, that's okay. I heard the evaluation of the superintendent or other staff member. I heard student expulsion. What's that last one? I'll give you a hint, it's my favorite.
Legal issues with the school.
Yeah,
About
imminent litigation and your district attorney is present by phone or in person. So those are the 4 closed session. Now, I think what you were getting at is exempt session, another non-public setting. And that's certain strategies, including like negotiation strategies. So that's closed session, exempt session is a challenging distinction. But the reason closed session is so specific is you need to list on your agenda, hey, there's going to be a closed session. And then there has to be a vote in open session. And we have to get enough people agreeing, yes, this is an appropriate reason to go into closed session. And then when you're in closed session, you've got to record, like an audio recording, just the one from the board secretary that has to be maintained in case there's a question down the road that you have to work with the state ombudsman for. And that board secretary also has to take detailed notes, which should be sealed and maintained. Again, this is all about if there's a question later down the road. And when you're in that closed session, you can't take any action. The closed session is only to maintain usually confidences. Confidences of student educational record. Confidences because of attorney-client privilege. Confidences because you're evaluating and it may impact a reputation. And confidences because of, what was my last one? The student expulsion. Yeah, that's not a nice thing to be putting out in the public, right? So you're maintaining confidences. And what happens if somebody breaks closed session and there's this failure of the board to maintain a confidence?
You violated the board
Policy.
policy.
Yeah, so,
There's
Legal
penalties.
There could be severe penalties
Yeah.
for that.
so question 1 is, well, give me the circumstances of this, because the district could be in trouble. And your obligation as a board member is to the district, not to mention, especially for 2 of those 4 are student issues, you have an obligation to that student and that parent under FERPA to not disclose. You disclose the strategy that you had with your legal counsel, you may have tanked the district's entire legal position in that matter. Or you have a discussion with an individual for purposes of evaluation and that individual requested the closed session for their reputation. That individual could have a claim against the board if that information was out. And if anyone just kind of says, okay, I'm just gonna kind of, talk to my spouse, talk to my neighbor, kind of ho-hum it, it's still getting around, right? And then we've got that question of, well, was that willful? Was it willful violation of that reason you were in closed session? And if it's willful, then there's a question of, well, does the district's existing insurance even indemnify you? Or are you off on your own and you need your own lawyer and you need to get your own house in order? So there's some consequences depending on the circumstances, which is why it's so rare to go into closed session and why we do have to go through and make sure the public knows what exactly we're doing. Why are they all together? Why wasn't this posted and what is it about? And that's why those 4 reasons give the public enough information to understand, okay, we're in closed session to protect somebody, but then any actual board action is going to come back into open session and there will be a public motion and there will be a public vote on that action. So I've gone in there, I do a lot with confidential documents, contracts and settlement agreements that then you come out into open session and maybe vote on that. And once the board has approved those contracts or settlement agreements, then it becomes a public record. But it wasn't until you made it one, right? Or if you vote to expel a student, okay, that's part of that student's record, but that's forever going to be confidential. That's that child's right. Each thing can be a very different reason. So there's going to be very different discussions occurring within those, which is why they're recorded by the board secretary and then maintained as one of your district's many confidential records. I cannot give short answers.
Oh, it's good.
I'm just not capable.
It reminds me of when I think about those times that most of the time, my experience has been if you're having a closed session, it's not an easy thing. And so for just a minute, I want you all to just turn and look to each other. And I want everybody to look everybody in the eye for a minute, because this is really important. It's important to me. And that is, again, when you're in a small community, I consider Muscatine to be small. And somebody comes to me and they bring me an employee issue and they tell me a lot of details about it. Or maybe they share it on social media. I read it, I comment, I add stuff. If Joe recommends a termination of a staff member, and that staff member now, who stopped me at the local grocery store and told me the entire story of what's happened, and they're gonna appeal that termination, who do they appeal to? Appeal to you. You become the judge and the jury. Now, I have to go to Paul and I have to go to Joe and say, I might have screwed up because I already know we shouldn't be terminating Sue because this happened and this happened. I got the whole story. I got everything from her. In fact, I'll just give you all the information you need, the documentation. And Paul and Joe are going to look at each other, and then they're going to call Catherine and say, I am pretty sure that Tammy may need to recuse herself because she is totally stepped in it. Catherine's going to say, tell me more. And if I cannot be objective to the situation, I cannot support all of you as a team. I can't advocate for the individual either. I don't get to be a part of the discussion. I'm on the other side of the door when y'all have your closed session. You can't tell me about it. I can't, nothing. And most importantly, again, everybody look at it. I left you high and dry. I have disappointed my team, and I cannot do that because chances are you're going to have to make a really tough decision, and you need all of you sitting around the table to do that. It's okay. It's okay when people want to share things with you to say, hey, Catherine, I don't want to be disrespectful. I'm really sorry X, Y, Z's happened, but I can't know what you're sharing. By the way, we have a policy that talks about chain of command. You're not really going to say that to a constituent, right? But you are going to say, I'm bound. I have to be neutral. I can't know these details. And it doesn't mean that you're not helping your community. It doesn't mean that you are being cold. It's how you say that, and practicing. I think that sometimes even at the board table, how do we say that? It's hard because sometimes it's your neighbor, it's your friend, it's a person down the street, it's a relative, maybe somebody you don't like, and it doesn't matter. But those are hard conversations to have, but you can't leave your team hanging. And what's really important is, I don't think a board member should ever decide on their own if they're going to recuse themselves. That's a conversation between bare minimum, board president, and superintendent, which 8.5 times out of 10 is going to involve a call to your attorney to say, just guide us. Because that's a hard one.
Yeah, and this role as adjudicator or judge is tough. It's tough when it comes to terminations and you're the judge in those cases, especially if you have a strong opinion one way or the other, but you have to be removed out of fairness to that individual because you kind of knew too much. And I always try and say, just be patient. Trust me, if you're just patient, you just remain impartial, you'll learn the information when it does come to that closed session. Same thing with student issues. You guys have seen the paper. You know what's occurring in schools leading to discipline right now. You know how impossible it is to avoid the news and stuff, but to remain impartial, it's a lot easier to show impartiality to that family when you're not the one continuing the discussion, whether it's, in kind of a private life or other setting. Because that student in that example can appeal the board's decision on the grounds that members of the board were involved in the decision and shouldn't have been, or members of the board should have recused themselves and been removed, but still sat in a room and may have impacted the rest of the board. And all of these continuing to rise up to different levels of appeal is not good for anyone. I would also just say that the one of the things I enjoy about working with public school districts is you are a branch of the government. So you are beholden to the state of Iowa's Constitution and the federal Constitution. And there are due process rights involved with a lot of these student and staff issues. There are liberty interests at play. I mean, you guys are being asked to do constitutional law here. Are you not excited about doing constitutional law? But in order to do that, you need to come in and really be able to lean on the rest of your team. Imagine if, and I hesitate to use student examples because even though they're very common for me, I'm not trying to target anyone. So let's say the captain of the ladies lacrosse team got busted with a weapon on campus, okay? You're having an expulsion hearing, but the whole community wants her to be able to play lacrosse. Can you imagine if 2 or 3 of your team had to recuse themselves? And so now instead of having 7 people decide what to do about the ladies lacrosse team's captain, you're down and now it's just 5 of you. What if it's 4? What if it's 3 people and you don't even have your majority board making this decision? That would really be tough to come back with the rest of the board later if you're not acting within your oath, which is also a policy, to operate within the interest of the district to the best of your ability. So that's my, once again, long-winded thing about the need to be able to serve as an adjudicator as one of your many, many roles as a board member. Gosh, I'm a school attorney and I'm getting a little overwhelmed by their responsibilities right now.
Right? It does feel a little overwhelming. Do we miss anything on the board side, do you think?
I don't think so. I think we made it pretty clear the list of
Joe,
responsibilities.
did we miss anything on the board side?
Looking at the big ones.
All right, y'all did a pretty extensive list. Let's flip to the other side. What do you got for the soup side, friends? Shout them out.
Hire staff,
Hire staff? Okay.
uphold board policies,
Ooh.
HR functions.
Inspire.
Ooh. Okay.
Make recommendation on budget issues.
Okay.
Must be able to delegate.
Excellent. What else?
Discipline staff and students.
Okay.
Is accountable to both the board and the community.
What other job has 7 people that a person has to report to? Holy cow. And the community. What else?
To a certain extent, responsible for public perception.
Okay, what else?
To motivate people.
Like that a lot.
Be an effective communicator.
Okay. There's one I want you to write across both lines because I forgot to mention it on the board side, and that is what I call no surprises. That means, board members, your responsibility is no surprises at the board table. That doesn't help your team. It doesn't help your superintendent. So if you want to know about the number of students that are on free and reduced lunch, which is a great data point you might want to study, if I just ask Joe that off the top of his head, that might not really be an answer that he knows that he can give you good information about, right? But if you want to talk about that and you just say, tell him maybe more than just an hour before the meeting, hey, could you have information ready on XYZ agenda item, right? That ties to an agenda item. I would be interested in knowing what's the impact of free and reduced lunch. Beautiful. Then he has time to bring you the information, and then guess what you all get to do at the board table?
learn.
Discuss.
You get to learn, you get to discuss it, right? It's really, really meaningful as opposed to, and sometimes this happens, right? I'll get you the information. Doesn't mean you don't ever get to ask questions, but anytime you can get those questions to him before the meeting, right? You have an agenda. By the way, your responsibility is to read it, come prepared, right? I know sometimes things get busy and weeks happen, and there may have been a time or two that I didn't read through my packet to the entirety that I should have, but that you're ready, right? Send in those questions. I would often say to my superintendent, I still call him my superintendent, he knows that. That was funny. He may answer, right, a question that I have, yeah, he knows it right off the top of his head. Will you just, when you do your board, your superintendent update, will you add that? Will you just include that? Whatever it was. Just, I don't care that I asked it, right? Just say it. Because here's the other thing. If one of you asks a question, chances are more often than not, the rest of you have one. And Joe's going to do the same thing for you. I don't want to be stopped at the local grocery store picking up my produce and Catherine says, hey, I heard there was a bus accident today. What happened? And I go, and it's now 4:00 in the afternoon. I don't know anything about it, right? Which, by the way, means I might just get a quick text, bus accident. I'll update you as soon as I know more. Because at 7:04 when it happened, what's the most important thing that you would want Joe to be doing if there had been a bus accident? Safety, right? Safety of students. Contact those students, right? And then just let us know, yep, everybody's fine. Okay, I don't need the details. I don't need to know who the driver was. I don't need to know who the students were. I need to know, did we follow our policy? Did we follow our protocol? Do we have operational buses? Do we have enough drivers? Those are really great governance level questions to ask, right?
At 7:05, 1 minute after the event, no one is going to have that information, which is why you may only have partial information because it's being collected. I'll also say again, and in the information I provided, I know it was a hefty board packet tonight, and I know you got a long meeting agenda later, but there's code to back all this up. So Iowa Code 27920 says the superintendent shall be the executive officer of the board and have such powers and duties that may be prescribed by the rules adopted by the board or law. So shall be the executive officer of the board. Like the law says this is how your districts are supposed to operate. This isn't me and Tammy and our traveling road show. This is the expectation across public schools in Iowa for how to maintain this. And that kind of comes back to that hourglass, which I'm not going to draw one more time. I kind of want
Zach and I totally.
I saw it.
Everybody else did.
Okay.
One of Joe's jobs is also to keep the board out of trouble. That's a big job.
Which means not giving you too much information, right? Not going to give you student names. He's going to say, hey, let's not put that in an email and reply to all board members. There's a reason for that. Because what happens if Joe sends you an email and you all start replying to that email and you're replying all? What? Good. Yeah, you've now created a meeting that's not in the public, right? And no one meant to cause harm, right? You're all just now all of a sudden having this great conversation. But who doesn't get to hear that conversation?
The public.
Right. Let them hear you. And it's okay if you struggle making a decision. It's okay if you struggle getting to consensus. Please be just good humans to each other about how you do that. But have that great conversation.
There's actually a policy for that.
There is. It's the democratic process, and that's the thing. Like you should all disagree and deliberate in a public setting. I mean, you should have 7 individual minds and 7 ideas of how to go about things. But then you come together for one joint vision, which I can hardly agree with one other person on what to have for dinner, right? So for 7 people to come to one joint vision of what to have for dinner or how to run a school district of this size, there's going to be differences of opinion, but it's reaching consensus. You might not get everything on your wish list right now, but you're still a board member. You still get to operate. The thing we really need to emphasize, though, is what Tammy said at the beginning. individually, you really don't have that much power. The board controls the district. An individual can't necessarily bind the board, but it might get the board in a little bit of hot water, right? So you have to, like, your obligation by statute and by your board oath is to come together, disagree, agree, reach some kind of consensus, and continue having those hard discussions. So it's not an easy task.
Joe, what did we miss? What did you have on your list that you haven't heard yet?
I didn't have a list.
Did you hear anything that we missed? Or what didn't you hear? Maybe that's what I should say.
I mean, I think you hit the basics. I mean, literally the day-to-day is where the superintendent resides.
Day to day, and that leaves you guys doing the greater vision and then the day-to-day details. Because really, how else? I mean, all of you have other jobs, right? Your superintendent has one job, and that's to try and put that vision you guys all gave into practice on a day-to-day basis.
Do you want him to get professional development throughout the year? Connect with his peers, attend a conference, and you all should do the same. It's exactly what you're doing tonight. So again, right across the middle of your list, I'd write professional development because that piece is really important. One other really important piece for the board, who evaluates the board?
The public does in the election process.
In an election process, yes, but who else? Who gives the board a formal evaluation?
Yourself.
You all should be doing a formal evaluation on how you function. You could start something as simple as, at the end of each meeting, Paul says, let's go around and talk about what did we hit it out of the park at? What did we do really well? And maybe Nick says, we spent 42 minutes talking about student data tonight. That was amazing. I loved that. And Jolene says, and we only spent 2 minutes talking about the price of milk that we need to approve the bid for, right? Which is, we have to do it. But to Nick's point, we got to spend 42 minutes talking about data, right? Where was that focus? And there are very formal pieces that you can use as well, but board, that's a really important piece that you're talking about that. Again, the good, the bad, the ugly. Sometimes when it's ugly, you high five each other and go, okay, how do we move forward? None of us are perfect. So it's okay to say, oh yeah, okay, or we didn't follow Robert's rule of order tonight. All right, great. Great takeaway. We're gonna work on that next meeting. Okay. But you all are accountable for that piece as well as how do you function in the effectiveness of your meetings. What did we forget? What do you want to remind him of?
You know, we threw a lot at them. I mean, I do quite a bit of PD, so there's always things and questions I can answer, but as you kind of go and reflect on these, if you do have questions, I'd recommend you filter them to your board president to see if there's follow-ups or additional learning. If you thought that this was helpful and should be something maybe done periodically, or if you didn't find it helpful, I think that's good feedback. But that's just from a legal standpoint and how we're operating in that context. The other piece I wanted to remind you is this is not an easy job. And it seems like every year just gets harder and harder. And I'm just thinking of, you know, when mom had to be on a board that voted to close the last elementary building, the public was not happy. It had to be done. There's just no other options. And I can remember that was pre-email. Nobody do too much math on that, but like phone calls and letters and people in the grocery store, and it just kind of stuck, right? Because sometimes the people that are upset about one thing are louder than the people that have all of these shared things, all of these positives about the community, all of these people here that are caring about how this district is operating and wanting it to succeed. So I would just maybe, you know, take a mental picture, or maybe Zach's got his camera out and can do one one more of that, but you're here for a reason. It is service. I would argue it's pretty high public service because there's not a lot of people that meet those qualifications we read at the start of the meeting and are willing to do the work you're all willing to do. I mean, my goodness, the Raiders and the Chiefs are playing right now, but we're all here working for this district, right? So I just want to emphasize that because there are definitely hard days, but at the end of it, you get to build this school district. And then look at what you've already done. I'm impressed.
How many of these types of trainings do you guys do in a typical year? Is this something common?
In my office, we do quite a bit. And we usually do it around this time, around the organizational meetings, sometimes shortly after elections. But it's pretty common. We also, I know your events are very well attended by school board members, and our firm speaks at those as well. We pull out different topics like HR for board members, because again, you don't see the day-to-day, but overarching, like, why are we doing things the way we're doing? Those types of things. So the IASB programs have been incredible, I think.
And I'm usually on the road 2 nights a week.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Are you both gonna be at the state convention?
All the cool kids are going to be there.
Okay, just asking.
That means I hope you are too.
Well, I'll be there.
You'll find us. You'll be able to, we'll be roaming around.
I have 2 last requests of you. One is you have an evaluation that was in your packet. It would be really, really helpful for me if you would fill that out. There's a question on the back as well that talks about kind of your takeaways from tonight that would be really helpful for me to have. Then you also had a document that says, should be on page 17, it says what I must do. And it looks like this. It's got lines on it. You just gave Catherine and I a hard 2 hours tonight. If you leave, you have your board meeting, we leave, and you all do nothing different, it's not really a great investment of your time. What I would ask you to think about is, what do you want to commit to doing differently, better, more of in the next 30 days? And I want you to write a letter to yourself. I'm going to give you an envelope. You're going to address the envelope to yourself, and you're going to take that letter, you're going to put it in there, you're going to seal it. I don't need to read it. And since I can't pop out of your mailbox in 30 days, or Catherine can't, but wouldn't that be fun if we could? You're going to get a letter from yourself, and you're going to go, why do I have this hand-addressed letter to myself? And it's your own check-in. So you can remind yourself in 30 days, here's what I was thinking after that training, and here's what I wanted to commit to doing. How am I doing?
Say that again. Oh, yes, do that.
going to share a video that captures what Catherine said so eloquently that I just love. I love. She's right. It's not easy. It's not always fun. But I will promise you, it's always rewarding. And you're giving such a beautiful gift to your community. So Joe will share a video. This was created by ISB in 2009. You'll see may notice some of the players. It's a little, they look a little dated, but it captures just beautifully, I think, the essence of board work and what you all do. That was a ship you were all staring, by the way.
So the screen's not casted. Y'all could have captioned the video and what you said up there.
And I appreciate especially the piece about we look you in the eye. That's what you all do to your community. So thank you for investing the time in your work. Thank you for allowing both of us to come tonight. And I'm a text, I'm an email, I'm a phone call away. So let me know how I can help and know that you have someone cheering for you in Southeast Iowa.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've been on the board for 8 years, and this is my first official training, so I think it was good and
Gotta fix that.
well needed. So we appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you very much.
Are you gonna recess briefly, or are you going to use the rest of your time?
I think we'll
I
recess
would
for
recess for a second.
3 minutes,
Do we need a
4
motion?
minutes.
Do we need a motion?
It probably would be best to make a motion to recess for 5 minutes, let people use the restroom.
I move to go recess for 5 minutes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion by Zach, seconded by Jolene to go in recess for 5 minutes, and we'll report back at 8:44-ish. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
If you've got the survey feedback information,
Great question.
we'll try to get those collected for
You know your stuff.
Hopefully, we'll see you.
Yes, thank you. Yep, appreciate your help. That was very good.
Yeah.
Do you want these, Joe?
Yeah, we'll set them right out.
I just appreciate your time today and great questions, great feedback.
Where's this?
Well,
Okay,
it's the
this is
same one.
the same one.
Yes.
Essentially, we just gotta put it all in the back, right?
No, it's two of the same thing.
I believe we should have a copy machine.
One is where I deliver, so.
Okay, good.
I hope there was a deal with that. I guess we'll find out.
I guess we'll find out. No, I think we're in this.
Heard this morning. Nice and dry, you haven't had any rain delays, right?
Nope.
Well, we did have one just enough to finish up with the meetings and keep it right time, so we had time to switch over to phone.
Good, good,
Because I needed a break in between.
good. Yeah, have a couple small ones, but, yeah.
Not very, very.
Y'all are total troopers to do this and turn around and still have a meeting. Oh my goodness. Did I get everybody's letter? Mike's working on his. Okay, you're okay, you're okay.
Oh, I didn't write my letter yet.
I didn't write a letter yet.
I want to put some thought in it.
All right, well, how are you gonna get it in 30 days? Will we give it to Joe? Will he mail it to you in 30 days?
I'll give it to you.
Sure.
Yeah, I want to put some thought to it. Here are your.
These here, I'm gonna leave these here. But thank you, I'm gonna put those there. There, I'm returning a full set.
It is. We went to Ida Grove and last country meeting, there was one of the. Like, I could stop. I kept opening it, trying to shoot it out.
The cross-country team is really doing well.
It is done pretty well, yeah. I think the girls have a decent chance of winning competition this year. So that'd be good.
The Axman girl really.
She's a good runner. She's a good runner. And Caitlin's just been kind of back and forth. Sometimes she runs, sometimes she doesn't. So she does a good job. Yeah. You know, we lost all the boys last year, and after this year, we lose a bunch of girls. So hopefully you get some. Brett Johnson's done a nice job with them. So it's been nice to see. So,
We have a couple flies that are just not leaving us alone.
as soon as waters are everybody.
I was going to say the same thing, it was stink.
I probably brought them with me. They're all over my house.
I got one bad too.
Yeah.
That's my coat now.
Yeah.
Not that I'm wishing it was cold.
You've had a.
Yes.
I heard that, I just.
It's 50 degrees.
I
List over this
No.
last.
Understand.
What's that?
I would never understand if that was the case.
That's true. Job.
I never forget. Then like Ohio State.
Yes. Yep.
We went down to the game Saturday. So that was a nice day to be at the game.
It's hard to watch.
Yes, it was the offense. Yeah. The tailgating was fun.
Sometimes the best part. All the food and games.
Just a nice day to be outside.
So did you
At the end of the
walking
session.
bridge?
We
Yeah.
did, yeah.
How was that?
It was, you know, actually walking over is, you've got enough. We drove under the food square. And I don't know if they have it lit up every night.
Oh, really?
I'm not sure if they did. We were there in a game day. But it does look really cool.
Yeah.
Tracked out.
I haven't been there since that.
So it is really cool.
These things are wet.
sure. Anyone else?
I think I'm good.
I grabbed one, thank you.
Okay.
5 minutes in. Right at it.
It's 8:42, we're gonna reconvene, and I failed to have us stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance, so if we could do that now. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So in front of you all, you should have a consent agenda which consists of the minutes, invoices, and the financial reports. And I assume you've had an opportunity to look at them. Any discussion?
Yeah, I have one on the meeting minutes. I'd just like to change. The last meeting, the minutes, there was a motion by Stulik, seconded by Crossgrove to adjourn the meeting. And then it says I abstained and went into discussion regarding the petition, which I didn't abstain anything. But rather asked if we could have discussion. So I would like minutes to be changed to, there was a motion by Stulik, seconded by Crossgrove to adjourn the meeting. Thompson interrupted the vote, requesting discussion of the petition filed pursuant to Iowa Code 279.8B and the creation of a committee of members, Thompson, Jansen, Dutcher. Birdie denied discussion, stating it was in violation of the open meeting law because it was not on the agenda. And Karen, I can get you this if you'd like it.
Does it take a motion to amend the minutes? So are you making a motion to amend them?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to amend the minutes.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Dustin, seconded by Chris to amend the meeting minutes from our past meeting, as discussed by Dustin. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Any other? Yeah, yes, we'll still need a motion to approve the consent agenda with minutes as amended.
Move to approve the consent agenda with the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Chris, seconded by Nick to approve the consent agenda with the amended minutes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So we will move on to what's going well, and we'll start with who is going first. Tracy?
Good evening. I wanted to let you know that as a district, we are showing great collaboration. We're not admiring problems, we're seeking solutions. Over the last several weeks, we've been sharing resources and covering for each other. The custodians have been helping in the lunchroom, the office staff have been helping with transportation, administration has been helping clean the school and the football field. Students are being responsible and picking up after themselves as part of our current work on responsibility, and staff have been filling in and helping wherever needed. This goes to show what a great place PAC is, and I couldn't be prouder to work here. I think we tend to lose sight of this, and I want everyone to know we are PAC strong. Another initiative we have where we're collaborating, Mr. Halder came and approached me about doing a video for transportation, and I thought it was a great idea, so the preschool through second grade students have been doing videos on the bus. We have finished that work, and now Mrs. Atkinson's class is going to do the editing for us so that we can have a transportation video put on by students. So I can't wait to see the finished product. We have one last thing. Our music teacher, Leah Rosado, who couldn't be here tonight, as part of our social emotional learning curriculum, our students were learning a song on respect. I've kind of talked about that lately, and she put together this video, and I think you'll like it. So that was our 3rd through 6th graders, and this was actually an idea the students had, and she ran with it. This song, each character trait comes with a song, and so she got permission from the company to do this, and then she sent them the link as well. So we want to be proud of. The kids really had a great time doing it, so thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
I like the video.
Yeah, way to go, Leah. We were involved in that. That was pretty cool. And kids.
That's a tough act to follow, but amazing, awesome, makes me super happy. I wanted to share with you guys that we're doing a musical this year, and that is being directed by Leah Rosado and Aaron McCullough, two brand new music teachers to our district. So we welcome them again, and we're very excited. I asked them to share a little bit about the musical. It's called Seussical the Musical Junior, and it's going to feature your favorite Dr. Seuss characters who collide and cavort in an unforgettable musical caper. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. There's 22 cast members, 6 crew members, and they wanted me to share, and I think this is awesome, but kids are going above and beyond to learn their parts outside of school and outside of rehearsal time, because a lot of the students that are in it are working jobs, and they're in drill team, and they're in athletics, and they're balancing all that stuff. So very excited. That's going to be on Friday and Saturday, November 11th and 12th at the Rialto. And there will also be a matinee performance for the elementary kids. So come see Seussical the Musical Junior.
Thank you, Andrea. Joe, do you have anything?
Got a couple things I'd like to share. One of the things I'd like to point out is that the Iowa High School Athletic Directors Association have announced that our activities director, Brandon Ruffridge, was selected as the 2022-23 Northwest District High School Activities Director of the Year. This award is given out by the Iowa High School Athletic Directors. Brandon was selected from his colleagues to receive this honor. He will be competing in the 22-23 Iowa High School Athletic Director of the Year Award, which is a statewide award, which will be selected this December. He will be competing against other district winners in the 5 districts, which are Northwest, Southeast, Southwest, Central North, and Northeast across the state of Iowa. Ask you as you see Brandon to help us in congratulating him for receiving Northwest High School Athletic Director of the Year.
Thank you, Joe. And if we don't see Brandon real soon, make sure and tell him congratulations on behalf of the board.
We'll do that.
Maybe he'll keep it going. Maybe he'll get State Athletic Director of the Year award. Brian Friesner.
Good evening. I'm here to talk about the RLC and the TLC here for Pocahontas. Start with the RLC. We're off to a great year right now. We're serving about 23 students, and out of those 23 students, we've earned 36 credits so far this year, which is off to a stellar pace. So my kids reluctantly say thank you for that opportunity, that they can earn those credits, jokingly. But no, thank you for the opportunity to purchase that platform from our kids, because it's a great use. It's a non-traditional way to earn education. We also use this for the recovery program here at the high school. Right now, we're serving 14 students there. At this point, we've gotten 2 kids to earn credit. So both programs are well on their way. So that's a little synopsis of the RLC and the credit recovery program. TLC is off to a good start with professional development. We started back on September 13th, where we talked about a shared vision for our school. A lot of great feedback came back from the staff, where we were able to talk across the buildings, not just the high school and elementary, but we had the groups intermingle. A lot of great conversations were had, good conversations about what we can do better as staff, how do we support our kids, and what that looks like going forward. We're working on signs right now that we have a vision statement sign that we're going to take some of the words that our teachers had and place that in there and put that around our district, not maybe just in our buildings. So those are the words that come from our community or from our teachers to show our kids what we're best in doing for them. Then we had one on October 5th here just recently, where we both high school and elementary talked about the comprehensive based assessment system. Now it ties with our MTSS goals. If you're kind of familiar with that, it's kind of a screener to get our kids assessed. When you go to a doctor, they take your temp, take your blood pressure, your pulse, oxygen, and it kind of helps set some baseline for your health and maybe care going forward. And that's kind of what these screeners do for our kids too, as we work through this, to make sure all of our kids are reached, not just our low achieving ones, but our high kids as well. So it's a program that catches all our kids to build them the best they are. Elementary worked on their data to help with those from their screener. They're just a little bit ahead of the high school right now. So they're working on the data to use interventions in the classroom. High school, high school worked with team meetings where we talked about at-risk kids that were just not functioning or achieving like they should be at the high school level or middle school level, and what we could do to help those kids out. So it was great, 2 days of PD, and we're looking forward to more as we build our district the best we can. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Brian. Next, we have Leah Rosado.
That's the one that Tracy did for her.
Oh, I'm
For
sorry.
the video. No,
Okay.
that's okay, it's on there that way.
Okay. Next, we have public communication with the board, and this is going to be limited to 20 minutes total due to our training this evening, and 5 minutes per person. Just the two on the list, correct? Okay. So Cindy Lutz is going to speak to us with regards to a school board meeting observation.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank Leah Rosado for that video. I think that was wonderful, and I'm into music kind of, so that to me was really, really special. I'm glad she sent that on to the people who had the music or the words to that music. I also want to thank Callista Herr for making the effort to video the school board meetings, and then which subsequently led to the school's techie person, Phil Trimble, to get them online. I watched the video, even though I was here at the last meeting, and I saw that there were probably over 1,000 people who had watched that video. So I think that is kudos to you guys. I think transparency is coming to all of us, and since I'm the mayor, we also took a survey as a mayor of videos, and whether we did or didn't do it, and I know that League of Cities is coming out with something for us to follow as well. Because of the video, it's also made, I just want to bring this up to you, it's also made transparent your body language. So if you are motioning to other people, your body language is evident to everyone who's out there. So I'm just making that aware to you, the council. And finally, I would like to see a little bit more detail in the minutes if we could. Mr. Kramer mentioned something about the Pomeroy School, I believe it was the, I want to say furnace, but it was boiler. I would like to see, I know you mentioned the dollar amount that you spent, but I think that would be important to be in the minutes. I know I was at a meeting earlier this spring when you went back in the minutes to refer to something, and I think it had something to do with the bus policy. But because the minutes were so vague, you guys couldn't make a determination based on those minutes. So I'm hoping that we get a little bit more detail in those minutes. And the final part, well, I guess I had watched, and Dustin made a comment, and you guys okayed that final part of those minutes of what I didn't feel that happened correctly. And I just got information as I'm sitting here listening to your presentation with the two women who were here earlier. You have a board policy that states, it is the responsibility of the board president and superintendent to develop the agenda for each board meeting. Any board member may place an item on the next regular agenda with the consent of the majority of the board. Board members wishing to do so should provide notice to the superintendent and the board president 3 days prior to the scheduled meeting. I personally think you guys should look at that policy, because if somebody here wants to bring something up and put it on the agenda, I don't believe, according to what I just heard, it's right for you guys to have a discussion amongst yourself about that agenda item to determine for sure if you think it should be on the board agenda or not. Because I believe you are violating the open board meeting with that policy. I don't think it should be a group decision as to whether something's on the board or not. So I highly recommend that you guys take a look at that policy and make a correction. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Sherry Williams to speak about communication.
Communication is the exchange, as by speech, letter, sign, or signal, between two people. The three basic types of communication are verbal communication, in which you listen to try to understand the other person's meaning. Written communication, in which to read their meaning. And third, the nonverbal communication, in which you observe a person and infer their meaning. And I think Cindy has kind of referred to that a little bit. The lack of ability to communicate from the Pomeroy bus barn resulted in a near tragedy this past Saturday. One of our bus drivers, who had been encouraged to wash her bus in the Pomeroy bus barn rather than in Pocahontas, nearly lost her life due to carbon monoxide poisoning. The driver had difficulty communicating, and so that she could ask for help. For whatever reason, the power washer filled the barn with carbon monoxide. And is the barn vented out? Does it have to be? If it has, it needs to be communicated to the drivers to leave the door open when operating the power washer. And will this situation be corrected? You know, we don't always like to keep the door open and it's 0 degrees outside. We all have cell phones, but it is difficult to get service in Pomeroy and or the bus barn there. Is there a functioning landline in the Pomeroy bus barn? If not, I suggest that one be placed there and the number communicated to all the bus drivers and the public in the community. This seems to be a major safety concern to me. Additionally, it doesn't seem sensible to pay a driver for driving their bus from Pokey to Pomeroy and back, plus the time to wash the bus. Shouldn't a power washer be available that all drivers can operate in Pokey? This doesn't make sense to me. Whose responsibility is it to communicate the aforementioned information to the appropriate people? Second, I understand it is illegal to have a school bus with children aboard when they are fueling. If not illegal, it seems highly unadvisable at the very least that fueling not be done with students on board. Apparently, this has occurred recently here at PAC. Who should be communicating this information to bus drivers? This is another huge safety concern. Third, is it legal or advisable to transport students on a bus with a shattered window? Who is responsible to communicate information about such a situation to the drivers and their supervisors so it can be repaired or replaced? Next, is it legal for drivers without a chauffeur's license or CDL to be busing children to and from school in vans rather than a bus because of a lack of regular route drivers? This could be a safety concern as well. Has any advertising or effort been done to recruit school bus drivers? Perhaps I've missed it, but I haven't seen anything in the local paper about driver openings or any possible bonuses that might be available. The community needs it on paper, online, on social media, etc. This all needs to occur, in my opinion. And finally, a letter to the editor in our local paper communicated many positive things that have taken place at PAC while Mr. Kramer has been our superintendent. I am pleased that those things have been done in our district. It's good. However, many of the complaints and the messages addressed to the board by the public in the last 5 to 6 months have not been about finances or concrete items. They have been about communication. That is the lacking or poorly done communication. It is still a concern for many of us. Also, 2 former board members' names that signed the letter to the editor haven't been on the board for at least 10 years. How is that relevant to this situation? Communication to and from the board, to and from the superintendent, to and from all PAC staff, to and from the public and all stakeholders is vital to a healthy, safe, trusting environment in our school. We are advocating for such an environment. In my opinion, we all have a lot of work to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Moving on to business. It's that time of the year to hold the election of president and vice president of the school board. So with that, Superintendent Kramer will take over as temporary chair of the meeting.
Following your board policy, at this point, I would take nominations for the position of president for PAC Board of Education.
I nominate Paul Birdie.
A nomination for Paul. Any others?
Nomination cease.
I'll second that.
Got a motion by Mike, second by Zach to cease nominations. I'd ask the board to vote for unanimous approval of Paul Birdie as president of Board of Education. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. And I hand back to Paul.
Thank you all. At this point,
Oh, you got to be sworn in.
oh, I'm sorry.
Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that you will faithfully and impartially, to the best of your ability, discharge the duties of the office of president in Pocahontas Area Community School District as now or hereafter required by law?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we'll accept nominations for vice president of the school board.
I'll nominate Dustin Thompson.
I'll nominate Chris Jansen.
Any other nominations?
Yeah.
I move the nomination cease.
Have a second to Zach's motion?
I second that.
We have a motion by Zach, seconded by Nick to cease nominations for vice president. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we have 2 nominations, so do we have to have a show of hands we'll start with, I'm assuming we're okay with show of hands? Yes. So let's start with Dustin's nomination. All those in favor of Dustin being vice president of the board, raise your right hand. Next nomination was for Chris Jansen. All those in favor of Chris Jansen being vice president of the board, raise your right hand. Wow. We have, what was that? 5-2. So we have a new vice president and Chris Jansen. Congratulations, Chris.
Yes. Thanks.
He's gotta be sworn in.
Yep.
Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that you will faithfully and impartially, to the best of your ability, discharge the duties of the office of Vice President in Pocahontas Area Community School District as now or hereafter required by law?
At this point, we need to appoint the board secretary and business manager.
I move to nominate Karen Holder as board secretary and business manager. I'll second that.
Do we have to do the
Yeah,
CISA?
if you'll have, we could vote and then you'd swear her in.
Okay. We have a motion by Zach, seconded by Chris, to nominate Karen Halder as board secretary and business manager. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Congratulations, Karen. Karen, do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, that you will faithfully and impartially, to the best of your ability, discharge the duties of the office of business manager, board secretary, as now and hereafter required by law?
I do.
Next on your agenda, we have to appoint Pocahontas County Conference Board representative, and it's required to have one board member do that.
I gotta excuse myself from that because I work for the county, so I don't know, I can't be nominated. I have a conflict of interest with it.
So our candidates actually would be, you have to reside in Pocahontas, the city?
In the county.
In the county.
In the county.
So,
Joe, Nick, and Chris.
okay, and myself. I've done this, 4 years maybe?
Does anybody want to step in and do it other than Paul?
You can do a good job.
I'll nominate Paul Birdie for the Pocahontas County representative. I'll second.
Any other nominations? Okay, we have a motion by Zach, seconded by Chris, to nominate Paul Birdie as Pocahontas County Conference Board representative. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And now we need to appoint a Calhoun County Conference Board representative. And in this case, we have 2 people that are
Yeah, but
eligible.
I probably should, they're temporary.
Okay. So we have Dustin.
Dustin would be the guy.
I was on it last year. I didn't go. I didn't know, wasn't aware of it.
Sure. Do we have a motion?
I move to appoint Dustin as Calhoun County Conference Board Representative.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Jolene, seconded by Mike, to appoint Dustin Thompson as the Calhoun County Conference Board Representative. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you for doing that, Dustin.
Yep.
So at this point, we need to put together our board committees. We have 3 of them. We have a sharing committee, a facilities committee, and a bargaining committee.
The sharing committee is typically the president and vice president. Is that correct, Joe?
It has been in the past.
I would make a motion that we keep that the same.
I will second that.
Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion by Zach, seconded by Jolene, to maintain the sharing committee as school board president and vice president, which happens to be myself and Chris Jansen. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So we have established our sharing committee. Next on our list is the facility committee. And currently we have, is it Chris, Mike,
Dustin,
and Dustin?
I think.
Jolene?
Currently you have 4. I would recommend keeping it to 3. Otherwise, you might as well
Yeah,
just have a
say-
board meeting because it's a
Yeah.
quorum.
I'd like to be on that.
Would anyone like to get off of it?
Well, Chris is gonna go, you're gonna be going to the other one, I can stay on it.
Okay.
Joe wants to stay on
I
it,
can stay on it.
then
That's fine.
we'll just have it down to 3, Joe.
So I nominate Mike, Jolene, and Dustin for the facilities committee.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Zach, seconded by Nick, to make up the facilities committee of Chris, Dustin, and Jolene.
No.
Oh, excuse me.
Mike, Dustin, and Joe.
Mike, Dustin, and Jolene. Sorry about that. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And our final committee is the bargaining committee.
I would like to be on that.
I would continue to be on it.
How many are on?
You can have the whole board if you choose because those are exempt
There's 4
sessions,
currently.
except for the first 2 meetings.
Me, you, Zach, and Nick.
I'm gonna take myself off that if I can,
Okay.
just that relation.
I can continue being on it, I guess. That's okay with me. Nick and Zach, you guys are okay?
Yes.
Do we have a motion for a bargaining committee?
I'll move to make it Nick and Paul and Zach on the bargaining committee.
I'll second that, Paul.
Okay, we have a motion by Chris, seconded by Mike, to make the bargaining committee made up of Paul, Zach, and Nick. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And that's what you need for committees, correct, Joe? And next, we have to establish the meeting date, time, and location. And for quite a few years, it's been the second Monday of the month.
I'll move, keep it the second month, the monthly meetings stay on the second Monday of the month, 7 o'clock here in the Commons area.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? So we have a motion by Mike, seconded by Zach, to establish the meeting date as the second Monday of the month at the high school commons at 7 p.m. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. At this point, we need to name an official publication. And we have,
I move that we continue the Record Democrat as our official school publication.
I'll second.
any other discussion? We have a motion by Zach, seconded by Dustin, to name the Record Democrat as the official publication of the school district. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And at this point, we need to designate legal counsel for the school district. And for quite a few years, we've had Allers Law Firm represent the district, as well as Hudson Law Firm for drainage issues.
So I'll move that we continue using Allers Law Firm and Hudson Law Firm.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? We have a motion by Zach, seconded by Jolene, to continue with Allers Law Firm as the official school legal counsel and Hudson Law Firm as the school counsel on drainage issues. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. At this point, we will discuss purchase of a used school bus. And that is on which page of our packet, Joe?
16 is where it starts. Mr. Halder has located a used 2014 with 42,000 miles for $35,000. A 65 passenger with hydraulic brakes.
My assumption is new buses are hard to come by.
New buses have other requirements associated with them now. And instead of 35,000, you're probably looking over 100,000.
Are today's buses, I'm just thinking like the hydraulic brake system, Jeff? I know they're air brakes today, most of them. Does that cause an issue, like rusting out the, with our weather conditions underneath, say, the brake line or any of that?
There's a lot of school districts that run nothing but hydraulic brakes.
Okay.
We're doing it for us. We got one coach that doesn't want to get his air brakes, and he drives our middle school football. The bus we're replacing is a 2002. It's got 140,000 miles on it, and it's got some engine issues that have come up. So you either put money into a $2,000 bus, or we replace it and update it.
It's 20 years old.
Yeah.
This is a low mileage bus for that year, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where, do we know where it came from? Or is this like an auction?
No, it come from a dealership. Right now, it's in Minnesota. It's an Iowa bus. It come from a district down in southwest Iowa.
Okay.
Is this a diesel engine or a?
Yes.
Okay.
Did they give a reason why they want to eliminate it from their fleet?
No, it's through a dealership, so they traded it in on something else.
Okay.
Or it's a lease, I don't know.
Yeah.
It- 65 passengers, is that normal? I mean, is that a bigger one?
Our big buses are 75 or 77. I think mine's a 78, but to stay with the hydraulic brakes, you gotta stay 65 as max.
Just another, I know that seatbelts are becoming a thing. This doesn't, is this so too old to where it doesn't have seatbelts?
Correct, yes.
This one.
Any other questions for Jeff or Joe on the bus?
This will be per us going to go look at it. It was in Minnesota and he's got to get it down to Marshalltown for us to go look at it.
So contingent on inspection, physical inspection. Okay.
Do we have, are you gonna inspect it or do we have mechanics to look at it?
It'll probably be me and Tyler go look at it.
Okay. It's your maintenance. Okay, thank you.
Do we have like an inspection checklist that you go by?
I think they have one they have to provide. And then we can take, what we inspect when we do ours every year.
Well, I'd move to approve the purchase of the bus for $35,000, contingent on inspection.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? We have a motion by Chris, seconded by Zach, to approve the purchase of the 2004 school bus for $35,000, subject to an acceptable inspection. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Next on your agenda is to discuss the disposal of bus number 10. I assume
By auction.
by auction, okay. I assume is this the bus that we are replacing or is this another bus?
Is this the one with motor problems?
Replacing number 10. We just take it to auction here in town, I assume?
Correct, wine garden. That's what we typically have done.
Yeah, we removed decals.
Well, when we get to that step, but it hasn't been done yet.
I'll move to approve the disposal of bus number 10 at the sale barn auction. I'll second that.
Any other discussion? The motion by Chris, seconded by Zach to approve the disposal of bus number 10. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next, we have to discuss the request for out-of-state travel. This is something we've done annually. The FFA is planning a trip to the convention in Indianapolis, October 25th through the 28th. Take a charter bus, 4 other schools. They have planned stops for industry tours, and we'll spend time at the National FFA Convention at Expo Center for Career Show. It's been a good thing in the past.
How
Kids
many
enjoy it.
students are going? I do not have a total.
Any chaperones? Sounds fun. I enjoyed that.
Andrew, any idea how many are attending?
Yeah, I think it's 8 kids.
Okay, great.
What are the other 4 schools, or what are the other 3 schools?
Manson,
Great.
South Central. I know Manson's typically been one of those, but
It's just curiosity.
I know we went through some applications together today, he brings them, used to bring them to Roger to see if there were any red flags, like, we want to make sure the students are in good eligibility and that kind of thing before we approve them going on this trip, so.
Move to approve, allow our FFA chapter to attend Indianapolis, Indiana convention for the FFA.
I'll second that. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
You're good.
We have a motion by Zach, seconded by Jolene, to approve the out-of-state travel for the FFA convention in Indianapolis. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Hope they have fun. Next, we have to discuss and approve the special ed deficit of $153,159.39. Joe, do you have a little background behind that?
This is a yearly process that we go through. We are in the group of the majority of the school districts in the state that run a deficit. Special ed funding has not changed literally for years and years and years. So as a result, it's very common to run a deficit. Under Iowa code, you're able to recoup that cash through modified allowable growth. So you get the spending authority back so that it does not negatively impact the rest of the students in the district. Not every state has this piece in their finance law. Iowa has it, which equalizes basically the impact on all students so that you're able to meet the needs of those who have special needs while at the same time not taking something away from the rest of the student body. I believe at 153, that's down a little bit from the year before, actually, just slightly. That number may drop in the future depending upon where things play out in the state. There is a statewide push right now to evaluate school districts in terms of whether or not they're running what's called LRE, least restrictive environment, for their students. And what that really comes down to is how many associates, in most cases, does a school district employ. So they're starting with different AEAs. Our AEA Prairie Lakes is one of the first to go through this with the state. This will take months to go through, but they are in the process right now reviewing state data as well as our local area. So my recommendation is to approve that modified allowable growth so that you maintain your spending authority without impacting you.
I move to approve the special ed deficit.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? We have a motion by Nick, seconded by Mike to approve of the special ed deficit of $153,159.39. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on our agenda is the Unity Point Berry Hill Counseling Services Agreement, which is page what of the pack?
24, I believe is where it starts. This is a process we've been working on in conjunction, really since the beginning of the year when you set mental health and as a priority for the district. Berry Hill has partnered with a couple other school districts in the past. Our neighbor Manson is one of those districts that they have partnered with in this same process, where they're able to at times find a counselor who would be dedicated to a school district. So right now, we're able to get services 1 day a week, part-time split between the elementary and the middle school, high school. This would put someone in the school district to provide services for our students 5 days a week, so that they would not have to travel to Fort Dodge or another location in order to receive and obtain those types of mental health services. Still goes through the same process as if you were going to Unity Point. So it goes through their security, their confidentiality of records. It still requires parental approval, insurance billing, all of those types of things. There's 2 ways for you to partner. They've got an individual who is interested in partnering with them on our behalf. It takes 3 to 4 months for them to obtain all the credentialing that allows them to bill to insurance. All right, so you, as a district, have the option of either waiting until that individual is fully credentialed so that they can bill to insurance. The other option is, as a district, you could say, we want to start those services. And because the person is licensed, they can provide services. They're just not credentialed to be able to do the billing at this point. That would move the cost, however, over to the district to provide those services. My guess is that would start off slow. On the maximum side, we've calculated that out to be in the neighborhood of about $8,000, a little over $8,000 per month if they were full load, basically. Typically, they don't see a full load for months because it takes time to build up that clientele over time. But those are your two options. We can wait until what could be January or February before that person would be fully credentialed, or you could choose to partner with them and taking on that cost because they would not be able to bill. So it'd be up to 80 people per month. Excuse me, 80, I think that's through. Up to 80 client load is what it would be at $105. So roughly a little over $8,000 per month would be what you're looking at in terms of funding. Now,
And that's
some of
just for
that,
the first 3 months.
that'd be until that person was fully credentialed so that they could
Then it
actually
would go
submit
into
to insurance.
Okay.
Correct.
So after the 3 or 4 months.
Yep.
that would be- Okay.
What you were referring to earlier was our set of priorities for IASB.
Well, you talked about an IASB, but you also talked about it in your discussions for our district in terms of where we're putting our energies as far as professional development, what you want to see happen for kids. That's part of the programming changes we've done at the middle school level here as well, with curriculum changes. So it's aligned to district priorities if you have interest in doing so.
Well, it's a school district need, in my opinion, and it's not just our district. I think it's becoming more of a need across state. And this is something that hopefully would be of benefit to the district.
For students, it cuts down the travel time. I mean, if you're talking about a potential hour session, almost an hour to get someplace, almost an hour to get back, you've knocked out half a day, basically.
What facilities would we utilize to do this, Joe?
That, if you say yes, that would be our next step then to identify either 1 or 2 locations where they would operate out of. So one option would be to operate out of one of the rooms in central office. We do have a vacant office space area there. That would be one option. We also have some other spaces here, but space is tight.
Well, and you gotta think through it in terms of confidentiality.
Correct.
also. Because if you have a kid that's sitting outside of the therapist's office and everybody sees it and everybody.
Central office would give you some separation, the ability to keep some confidential filing cabinets, and maybe not be under direct. But those are things we still need to talk through with them at this point. It's really, first step was, is this a direction that you're interested in pursuing?
My assumption is the staff is in support of this.
This has happened fairly quickly, to be very honest with you. They came to us just a few weeks back because they literally had 2 people drop into their lap. Pocahontas County is an area that is more underserved. There are just not as many providers available to this county, which means our children have to travel further in order to obtain those kind of services.
Immediate need?
Yes.
You have the max, what's the minimum, I'm guessing, depending on how many kids?
It's going to come down to the number of students
Okay.
served. So it's $105 an hour.
Okay, just depending on how many clients.
Yep.
Okay.
I suppose technically it could be 0, right?
Yeah,
You don't
it could be
send anyone.
starting off because it will take some time to get that process up and running. And then once we enter into this, then once they're fully operational, they base their load basically on those 80 hours. If for some reason they would fall below that, then the district would be responsible for making up that shortfall. I checked with Superintendent Manson, and last year they were short $2,000 in order to have that service in district for their kids. So there's not the necessary need for travel. Parents are having to take off in order to make those things happen.
Let's make it happen.
Is that a motion?
I move that we approve the Unity Point Berry Hill Counseling Services Agreement and started immediately.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion by Zach, seconded by Nick to approve the proposed counseling services agreement with Unity Point Berry Hill, effective immediately. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Good luck with that. I hope it's helpful to the district and our kids. Personnel. Resignation, Joanne Brinkman, Superintendent Secretary.
Move to approve with appreciation for time with the district.
I'll second that. Okay, we have a motion by Nick, seconded by Mike to approve the resignation of Joanne Brinkman with appreciation of service to the district. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Contracts. We have the list in front of you. Sarah Ives, wrestling cheerleader coach. Wendy Kirchhoff, bowling coach. Gabriel Killian, girls wrestling coach. Abrielle Point, assistant drill team coach. Amy Kinnear, associate. Amy Van Holland, high school, middle school secretary. We don't quite have a name yet for central
Correct.
office.
We've had 6 applicants so far. We have 2 that we have currently interviewed, and we're running background checks with a possible 3rd interview. I'm expecting we'll have potentially closure on this yet this week.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Mike, seconded by Jolene to approve the contracts as read off earlier. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next regular meeting, November 14th, 22 at 7 p.m. at the same location.
Move to adjourn. I'll second.
Motion made by Chris, seconded by Zach to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Oh, thank you, Mike.
Okay, thank you.
Excited.
Well, hey, probably 2 out of the last 2 years, I wasn't having a vote.